Hello, folks. Welcome to Holding On with Hope, where I talk to interesting people about interesting topics. My name is Steve Holder, and I am your host. My guest this evening is Tracey Osborne, Certified Trauma Recovery Coach. Welcome, Tracey.
Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you here. So tell us about you. How would you describe yourself?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I am a mom of four, a grandmother of two. Um, I am a domestic abuse, rape, and sexual assault survivor, as well as childhood emotional abuse and grief. Um, it's because of my past that I do what I do today, which is help other women survivors move past their past and create a life that they can cherish.
Okay, now you said women. Does that mean you don't work with men at all?
I do not work with men. Yeah, I refer them out to colleagues.
Okay. So why do you call yourself a trauma coach instead of some other kind of coach? I mean, I've interviewed a lot of people who call themselves coaches. So why trauma coach?
Because trauma is where I specialize. So because of my past, I work with women with similar pasts and help them to overcome their traumas. And so I don't really work on life coaching. I don't do business coaching. I don't do health coaching. I focus solely on helping them to overcome their trauma.
Yeah. But do you think men need men trauma coaches, or is this something that you think should be sex?
I don't think so. I think, it just depends on the person. Women tend to feel more comfortable talking to women. And I can relate to them better than I could to a man who's been, sexually abused or in a domestic violence situation, because it does happen to men too. Um, but just because of my personal feelings, that's why I choose not to work with men.
So you've
But
experienced a lot of trauma in your personal life.
I have. I have, yes. I've been in multiple abusive relationships. I was raped when I was 18 on senior prom night. I was raped again about 6 or 7 months later when I was at a party with some guys that I knew, and I blacked out. So I have no idea what happened or anything like that. And then I had another sexual assault attempt on me when I was 5 months pregnant with my second child. So, and on top of that, I grew up with emotionally abusive grandmother, Italian grandmother, and then my stepmom.
Well, you certainly know what trauma feels like.
I do. And what solidified my decision to go this path was in 2019 when I lost my husband unexpectedly.
Yeah. Did you experience a lot of depression because of the trauma?
Absolutely. I have experienced depression for most of my life. I didn't know for a long time what it was. I just knew that I couldn't get off the couch. I couldn't sleep or stop sleeping. All I wanted to do was sleep my life away.
Yeah.
I didn't know back then that it was depression. Now I recognize the signs.
Before you recognized the signs and got what the treatment that helped you, what did you do to deal with the emotional pain?
I had to push through it because I didn't understand what was happening, what was going on. I thought that thought I could handle it, that I was strong enough to deal with all of the trauma on my own. You got to realize this was 20 years ago before we really started looking into trauma on a personal level. Back then it was more of the PTSD for military people.
Yeah.
So, yes, there was rape counseling and things like that, but I didn't think I needed that. I figured I was a strong enough person that I could handle it on my own, and I was wrong.
Were you told just to suck it up and move on?
I basically told myself to suck it up and move on. I wasn't told by anybody in particular. Now, what I can tell you is that when I was assaulted when I was 5 months pregnant, and I had called the cops on the guy, and I told the cops what had happened. Part of what happened was when he was trying to pull me into his lap and try to pull my underwear off, I punched him to get him to let me go. And he picked me up and threw me onto the ground. So when I'm telling the cop this, the cop told me I shouldn't have punched him,
Wow.
which is the equivalent of like, this is your fault.
Yeah.
And it wasn't my fault, you know? So that's probably the closest I got to suck it up and let it go
Yeah.
from somebody.
I read something recently that said only about 25% of sexual assaults are reported. And what you just mentioned, I imagine, has a lot to do with that.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's probably less than that, honestly. I didn't report when my boyfriend raped me on prom night. I didn't report when I'm pretty sure that I was raped, about 6 or 7 months later than that,
Yeah.
because I didn't remember anything. And, and I put myself in that situation. So I figured it was my fault if something happened.
Yeah.
I was with two guys I didn't really know that well. I was at their apartment. I was drinking heavily. When I blacked out, so for me, I figured it was my fault. And that's very, very common for victims, is to think that, well, it's our fault. We did
Yeah.
X, Y, Z to lead up to what happened. So why should I report it?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned alcohol. Did you deal with all this by using alcohol and drugs? Were you into drug abuse or alcohol abuse?
No, I never did drugs. Other than in my early 20s, I tried marijuana a couple times and couldn't figure out what the great deal was about it.
Yeah.
The drinking was my younger days. And I woke up one day when I was probably about 27, 25, somewhere around there. I don't know, my mid to late 20s. I just woke up one day and said, I'm done. I don't need to be drinking.
Yeah.
I was up to a 6-pack a night, and I'm like, I'm not going down this path. And it wasn't because I was trying to numb anything. It was because I was hanging out with all the neighborhood guys, neighborhood dads and stuff, and we were all hanging out and drinking together.
Yeah.
So my drug of choice was food. I turned to food.
Yeah. So have you experienced a lot of anxiety over the years because of these incidents? I imagine you have.
Oh, absolutely. Anxiety, depression, and it showed up in a lot of other ways that are unhealthy. Promiscuity was one of them. I felt that my worth was tied to how other people saw me. So I figured that the more men that found me attractive, the better I was, the
Yeah.
better person I was, the prettier I was, the more worthy I was.
Yeah.
What I didn't realize is my worth isn't tied to what anybody else thinks, for one. And for two, it's not that they saw me as pretty or worthy or anything like that. They saw me as easy. It was definitely not the reaction I was going for from them. So
A wise old man told me once that everybody wants to be loved, but most people will settle for attention.
yeah,
And that's unfortunately true, isn't it?
that is absolutely true.
Yeah.
And when we don't get attention in a positive manner, we seek it in a non-positive manner, in a negative manner.
And we learned that when we were children, and we don't
Absolutely.
realize what we're doing. And then we continue it and we still don't know what we're doing. Yeah. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, kids act out and they misbehave, and it's because they're looking for attention and they're not getting it.
Sure.
They're not getting what they need. So
Yeah.
they'll get it any way they can.
Yeah. And it's nothing unusual for people who experience trauma to have anxiety for the rest of their life. I mean, I'm sure you dealt with that a lot.
Mhm.
Different people
Oh,
you
yeah.
worked with and yourself.
Oh, yeah. We have anxiety, we have our triggers that set us off. And trigger the anxiety, could trigger depression. Uh, I've noticed I've been a little bit more tired than usual lately and wanting to sleep a lot. And then I realized the second anniversary of my husband's death is coming up in a couple weeks. And that's why I've been sleeping a lot and feeling a little bit more depressed. So being able to recognize that and see those signs allows me to take action, whether it's, contacting my doctor and upping my meds for a couple of weeks, or, whatever it is that I need to do to get through that, talking to my support groups, my support system.
Yeah. Which do you think plays a bigger role in recovery, medication or some kind of coaching and or therapy?
Oh, coaching and or therapy, definitely. The medication fixes some of the symptoms. It helps keep the depression and the anxiety at bay.
Yeah.
But it doesn't resolve the trauma. It doesn't resolve the issues. It doesn't take the nightmares away, or the flashbacks, or any of that stuff. That comes through working with a therapist or a coach, or somebody who is trauma informed and can help you to um, come up with coping strategies
Yeah.
to deal with those.
And those coping strategies are important because it's certainly common for people that have been through trauma to live in fear for the rest of their lives. And,
Absolutely.
and
Fear, anger,
yeah,
hate. Yeah.
guilt and shame.
Guilt and shame are huge.
Yeah. How do guilt and shame come into that? If we're victimized, why do we feel ashamed and guilty?
Because so many times we feel like either it was our fault, as in, for me, in the case of going out partying with guys that I didn't know, or there should have been more that I could have done. I should have done something better. So when Mark had his heart attack and I was performing CPR, my guilt showed up as, did I start it fast enough? Did I do it properly? Was there something I could have done better? What if I had done this? What if I had done that? And that's my guilt showing up. It's not
Yeah.
my fault he passed away.
Right.
It just is. But that's why the guilt and the shame pop up, because it's our way of trying to rationalize it in our minds.
So there are a lot of people that don't really come to the realization that they have lived through trauma.
Mhm.
So how important is it for people to learn that they have been traumatized?
I think it's pretty important, because whether it's a big T trauma or a little T trauma, um, they still affect you, and you may not realize that. Just a statement that somebody made to you has had a huge impact on your life. For example, when I was 15, 16, I hadn't seen my dad for a year. And the first thing, or one of the first things out of his mouth when he saw me was, well, if I can't have the sexiest daughter on the block, I guess I'll have the shortest daughter.
Wow.
I wasn't overweight by any stretch of the imagination. I was thin. I had that little pooch, and that's what he was talking about.
Yeah.
And that one statement from my father triggered a lifetime's worth of eating issues.
Yeah. I remember something I heard a lot when I was a kid that, I didn't know any better back then, but now I realize how horribly wrong it was. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Have you heard that?
Absolutely.
Isn't that ridiculous?
I would rather have the sticks and stones, because those
Yeah.
heal after a while.
Exactly.
The words don't go away.
Yeah. I've also learned that, sometimes we forget what people say and we often forget what they do, but we never forget how they make us feel.
Absolutely. Yep.
That is always there. As soon as you see somebody, you remember how they made you feel.
Hmm.
That's something that
Yeah.
just doesn't go away.
Nope.
So do you believe in karma and reincarnation? Do you think that is that something that's involved here? Some people say it is.
You, I mean, I believe in I think self-made karma. I think that, bad people or people who wrong others tend to attract that kind of behavior and that kind of thing into their lives. So, that would be a karma, I guess. But I think really they're just attracting it. They're attracting that negative stuff into their lives. Reincarnation, yes, I do. Um, and I'll tell you what, when I was 15, I was playing with a Ouija board one night. And how that goes, just dabbling with it with friends. And we had this spirit on there she was a little girl named Ada. She was about 3 or 4 years old. And we couldn't get her to go away. And so I finally started asking her, why are you here? What do you want to talk to us about? Well, according to, the story, she was my daughter from a previous life. And I strongly believe that she reincarnated into my oldest child.
Does your oldest child agree with that?
Um, I don't know that I've ever actually really said that I mean, she knows the story, but I don't think I've ever actually said that I think that she's the reincarnation of this Ada. Yeah, I don't think I've ever said that to her.
Is there a reason you haven't told her, or just you never felt a reason?
It just never came up. It's not something
Yeah.
we talk about a whole lot,
Yeah.
That was pretty much the only time I've ever played with the Ouija board because it scared the bejesus out of me.
Yeah. I think it scares a lot of people.
Yeah.
It scares me. I've never done it, but it scares me.
Yeah.
So what kind of role does religion and or spirituality play in recovering from trauma?
I think for a lot of people, it plays a huge role, whether it's, um, giving their pain, giving their turmoil over to their God or their higher power, whatever they want to call it, or just having that faith that there's something, there's something divine out there that has a better plan for us.
Yeah.
I think, it really does play a big role in a lot of people's recoveries. I'm working with a group of women now, and that is one of the things that a couple of them have said is that, without God in their lives, they wouldn't be able to go through this.
Yeah. Is there such a thing as spiritual trauma?
I'm sure there is. I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind are cults, using religion as a way to attract people and to get people in and to control them. So I guess in a way that could be considered spiritual trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have experienced spiritual abuse, which I guess turns into spiritual trauma at some point, with a lot of guilt,
Yeah, I mean,
shame, and manipulation involved.
yeah, there's shame, manipulation, absolutely. I mean, look at, oh gosh, who was it? Was it Jim Jones that made everybody drink the Kool-Aid?
Yeah.
There's a lot of brainwashing involved,
Yeah.
and it's all done in the name of God or the Lord, So yeah, absolutely. There could be definitely spiritual trauma from people coming out of a cult.
You mentioned the brainwashing. Some people say that therapists brainwash people also. Do you believe that?
No, because brainwashing is something that takes place over a period of time and it's a repetitive thing. You know, from my understanding, and I am definitely no expert on brainwashing, but from what I know, they break the people down. You know, they have to break your spirit, you know, and then they fill you up with whatever it is that they want you to know. So, um, you know, those who are in horrific domestic abuse situations go through this. Their abusers berate them so much and break them down until
Yeah.
they're just a shell. And so they are brainwashed into thinking they are no good, they aren't worthy, they deserve what they got, it's their fault, you know. Um, so I don't see that therapists brainwash, um, as opposed to, or as not as opposed to, but as much as they really just kind of get you to see what's happened, and
Yeah.
that what's happened isn't your fault. So it's between therapists and coaching, we get you to shift your mindset. But that's not something that we can do for them. They have to do that on their own.
So what we think has a lot to do with how much we suffer from the trauma and how long it takes us to get over it if we ever do, right?
Oh my goodness. So we have like 60,000 thoughts a day, right?
Really?
Somewhere around there. It's a high number. Um, and then there's about, what is 75% of what we thought today, we thought yesterday. And then I think 95% of that is negative. So what happens is we get these thoughts on repeat, and we don't even realize we're doing it and that we're having them. They're just repetitive and they're automatic. And
Yeah.
so part of what we have to do is to teach the survivors to be conscious of those thoughts. And when they start popping up, to stop them and reframe them into something more positive. And then the more they do that, eventually those thoughts will stop and they'll be replaced with something more
Yeah.
positive.
Do you think that the coaching that you do has a big impact on people? I mean, do you help people a lot or a little? How do you rate that?
Well, I'd like to think that I help them a lot. I do what I can to help as many people as much as possible. Um, a lot of it though is up to them. I can only do so much.
Yeah.
I can give them tools, I can give them resources, I can help them see what they can't see, but the change has to be on them.
Yeah.
You know, they have to be
Yeah.
willing to let go and to
Yeah.
move forward.
How many clients have you worked with so far?
Um, well, I'm just really getting started, so I've only had about a handful of clients. I have a group of 12 that I'm doing a group coaching program with right now. Um, I was waiting to get my certification. For me, that was important to have, just because of what I am working on, you know, because I am doing the trauma. If I was doing business coaching or anything like that, I wouldn't care about certifications, but because I am working with mental health, to me, it was important to go through that training. So, um, yeah, so I'm really just in the beginning of my journey as
Well,
far as coaching.
congratulations on getting your certification.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Now, are you expensive?
No, no. My philosophy is that I want to provide support that is affordable because every survivor deserves a chance to thrive.
Yeah.
So I'm not one of these pay me $6,000 for 4 weeks, that kind of thing. For me, coaching needs to be affordable. It's not something that goes through insurance. So it's just something that is important to me,
Yeah.
that I keep my prices affordable.
So is there a set time, a set treatment plan time, or is it all just based on what happens and how they recover?
It's client led. So,
Yeah.
their healing, everybody's healing journey is different. It's not a cookie cutter thing. You can't, like I've got the women in a program right now, and we are doing 4 different areas of work. We uncovered their limiting beliefs. We worked on letting go of their past. Next week, they are working on finding their worthiness. And the last week is rewriting their story. Are they going to be completely healed at the end of the 4 weeks? Absolutely not. But as long as they continue to do that work, they will be better than they were when they started the program.
Yeah.
So everybody's healing journey is absolutely different. And I kind of let my clients take the lead on how deep we go, how fast we go, that kind of thing.
Now, does your coaching, is that take the place of therapy, or is it just work along with therapy?
Works along with therapy. Typically, I will not work with somebody who is fresh out of a domestic abuse or sexual assault situation. That needs to have a professional therapist. I tend to work with people who are, about 1 or 2 years out and have gone through some therapy already. And I can definitely work alongside of a therapist, because the therapy really focuses on what happened in the past. Whereas we're focusing on getting past that, letting go of the past, and what's happening going forward and living in the present.
So you deal more with the solution.
Yeah.
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 Now, you're also into cognitive behavioral therapy. Can you explain that? And does that work along with the coaching, or is that something different?
No, it's a coaching modality that I use. And basically it's all about reframing your mindset and your words, and being aware of your thoughts. So many times we're not aware of our thoughts. And so, being cognitive and being mindful of what's going on in our heads is a very powerful tool for healing.
So is cognitive behavioral therapy the same thing as mindfulness?
In a way, I think mindfulness has a little bit more, oh goodness, I don't want to say it. I think mindfulness is a little bit more, to me, it's more spiritual in a way. But it definitely, because I know that they have cognitive behavioral therapy coaching, and I also know that they have mindfulness for or cognitive behavioral therapy for mindfulness classes. So I think mindfulness goes a little bit deeper than just the cognitive behavioral therapy, because mindfulness keeps us in the present, and the CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy really focuses on our thoughts.
Yeah. I imagine you do most of your coaching online these days, correct?
Yeah, oh yeah, I do it all online. I don't have an office. I work out of my home.
Yeah. So you have a website. Can you tell us about the website?
I do. My website is traumareleasecoaching.com. You can find all my information, how to find me on social media. Everything is right there.
So is that basically how you find clients, through your website?
No, I actually do it through, my email list, my social media. I get out and talk to people on social media and make those connections.
Yeah. Now, some of the coaches that I have interviewed have said they're also into Reiki. Is that something you're involved in also?
I am not. It's just not something that I've ever really gotten into. My sister is a Reiki master, so I let her handle that. And
Okay.
I focus more on the brain.
Do you think that works together with the coaching and the therapy?
I think it absolutely could. Reiki is a great way to help heal pain or take away the pain and the anxiety and that kind of thing. It's a modality. It's like using meditation.
Yeah.
It's just another modality or tool to use.
Yeah. Of course, most folks can't afford therapy, coaching, and Reiki and all that together. So
No, absolutely.
that can get
Especially
expensive.
considering, none of it is covered by insurance. Most
Exactly.
therapists don't take insurance. You have to pay them out of pocket and send a receipt to your insurance to get reimbursed, and that takes forever.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you want to say and get out there that I haven't given you the opportunity to say?
One of the biggest things that I love to just reiterate, and we'll say it repeatedly, is number one, your trauma is not your fault. And number two, there is life after trauma and you are not alone.
Yeah. Definitely, there is life after trauma, and there's certainly plenty of us that have experienced it in one way or another.
Absolutely.
So Tracey, thank you for being my guest. I've enjoyed talking to you, and wish you all the best. And folks, thanks for tuning in to Holding On with Holder. Please subscribe to my channel and feel free to share this video all over social media. Tracey, I will let you go, and thank you very much for being my guest.
Thank you so much.
You have a great day.